Hey, what's up, nerds? It is Paul here at Radio Free Hammer Hall, and today we are going to talk about what has become an absolute tradition in Age of Sigmar. That is, every time there is some sort of new book that comes out, it's a buff to Nurgle. So, new General's Handbook is previewed today, and that is giving us access to all these beautiful new rules that are going to be in match play in the next General's Handbook. Um, Now we're not sure how long this General's Handbook is going to last because it says season one. Um, so it could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be valid for another year, like General's Handbooks have been historically. Um, but anyway, this is what we got to work with for now. And I just did another video on why you collect armies rather than build lists. And I'm very thankful for my big collection of Nurgle back here, um, because some things just got better, and it's weird because uh, like I'm not sure anything actually got worse in the Nurgle book with this new General's Handbook. It's like a bunch of stuff that was already pretty good just got bumped up a little bit because you have an anticipated meta shift. Um, and some things that are just outright better than they used to be just because of rules changes in this battle pack. So, the important things for this battle pack that we really care about. Um, Troop units with 4 wounds or less are Galatian veterans, which is just sort of a keyword that on its own doesn't really mean anything, but there's a lot of other stuff in the battle pack that triggers off that keyword. And I'm forgetting the name of the ability because it is brand new to me and has not stuck in my brain yet. But basically, Galatian veteran units can fight in 2 ranks. So the way it's actually worded is that a model in a Galatian veteran unit can fight if it is within a half an inch of another model that's within a half an inch of an enemy model. So that's always effectively fighting in 2 ranks. So that definitely changes the dynamics of what units are going to be good or useful or powerful on offense. Then there is a battalion that it's 2 to 3 Galatian veteran units, and the models in those units count as 3 models when contesting objectives. That's really important. And then we have another battalion that is 2 to 3 troop units of any type, and they get +1 damage against Galatian veteran units. So a little bit of counterplay there. You're incentivized to have Galatian veteran units, but you also have this thing attacking them. Then the other important things obviously are having Galatian veteran units is useful for grand strategies, battle tactics, and battle plans that have some condition relating to Galatian veterans. Much like we had with monsters in the last battle pack, now it's similarly Galatian veterans, although in the battle tactics, there's a lot less bonus points for doing stuff with Galatian veterans. Unlike the previous battle pack, which where you had all kinds of bonuses for monsters. They did away with a lot of the bonus point stuff. And that honestly is oddly enough another buff to some of your Nergal stuff. So, with that in mind, what does that mean? It means that people are going to be playing with a lot more units of troops. Like, their value went up. They're more powerful, they get more attacks, they're contesting objectives for more points. You need them to do battle tactics, and Your opponent is always going to be running some number of them, or not always, but most armies are going to be running some number of them because that describes pretty much all battle line units. So your opponent's army is probably going to have Galatian veterans just by virtue of having their minimum battle line. So now, if we look at our own Nurgle army, we get some stuff that is getting benefits for being Galatian veterans, right? And then we get some stuff that is going to be better because all of those battle pack rules are going to be encouraging people to play units with more models in them, frequently more models with fewer wounds. So we're going to see more hoardy armies than we had previously. Less monsters, more chumps. It's, I think, really what we have going on. So I went through the book, and I picked out the things that I thought were specifically going to be better now in this new battle pack than they were in the previous one. Or at least things that are getting some sort of like marginal benefit, where they might have had a penalty before, or there was a drawback before, or something like that, right? There's nothing in here that I really see as strictly being worse. I think a lot of things are going to stay the same in the meta, and we're just going to see a shift a little bit away from monsters and a little bit towards troops. And I think certain armies are going to be benefiting a lot from this. Like, I think there's some things that are, I mean, they're just going to be better. Like, suddenly, like, Bestigor are really good. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, that Pestigor conversion project that I've been thinking of for a long time. Maybe we could do that now. But knowing how long it'll take me to do that project, and that this battle pack might last 6 months, I don't know that I'm actually going to build that. Might buy some Pestigor and paint them up, though. All right. So, stuff that's actually in this book. I'm just going to kind of go in order of what's in the Battle Tome until we get to the War Scrolls. And then there's a couple of things that are real important to talk about off the top. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about the elephant in the room right off the beginning. Probably the single most improved War Scroll in this book with this set of rules in this battle pack. That is Plague Bearers. Plague Bearers were already good. However, coherency rules were kind of bad for them. They're 32 millimeter bases, 1 inch reach. So a unit of 10 of them probably only got 5 attacks in most of the time. So now that we're always fighting in 2 ranks, it doubles the number of attacks that we're going to be able to make with a unit of 10, in theory, right? You can also put it in that battalion to make them all count as 3 models each. And then there's a bunch of other things in this book that synergize with Plague Bearers, that now that they have these buffs and extra incentives to play them, we also have all of these synergies that we can throw onto them to make them even better. So I think it's not that Plague Bearers were ever bad. It was that they were mostly just a thing that was an anvil before. And now I think they have a little bit more play to them than they previously did. Because they're not just a number of bodies that go and sit on an objective and not die anymore. They can go in the battalion that makes them all count as 3 models. So, they're going to be a lot harder to lift off of objectives because they're already incredibly resilient. But now, because they can fight in 2 ranks, that incentivizes you to play units of 20, and incentivizes you to run Spoilpox Scrivener and Sloppy Bile Piper and all of those sorts of things that are going to buff them up even more and make them more powerful. And now they're actually like legitimate on offense. They're not just dopes sitting there. So a lot of what I'm going to really be talking about is really in the context of Plague Bearers are better. And with Plague Bearers being better, that changes the value proposition of a lot of other things in the book. Because again, synergies, right? Like if you have something that is a good buff piece for another unit, but that other unit is either not good or not good at the particular thing that you're talking about, then it doesn't matter that it's like a good buff piece for that. Like if the thing you're targeting isn't good at that thing, then there's no point in it. Like, you know, I think a good example is if you look at Horticulus Slimux in the old book, he wasn't really that good. Like, he had that same ability to buff Beasts of Nergal, but Beasts of Nergal weren't that good, so nobody ran them. And so, like, all Horticulus was really then good for was to plant a tree for free. And then is he actually, like, is his points worth his body plus a free tree? Usually wasn't. He didn't see a lot of play. But now, like, you add all of the synergies up together and you play your cards right. You run a bunch of Beasts of Nurgle. They can be battle line. They're really good now. He's buffing them. And you get that extra tree, and with various other things, the math works out that starting on the second battle round, you're summoning another Beast of Nergal every turn. So the value propositions on things can change very easily when like one more scroll changes. So with that in mind, now that we can say Plague Bearers definitely get a huge buff in this battle pack. They're much, much, much better. So let's look at the rest of the book. Now, a lot of these things are not necessarily going to be about synergizing with Plague Bearers in particular, but there's a lot of things that just generally got better. Starting off with command traits, there was really only one that I could pick out that really I thought saw a market improvement, and that is Pestilent Breath out of the demon command traits. So at the start of your shooting phase, you roll a die for every enemy model within 7 inches of the general, and every 5 up is a mortal wound. I mean, that's solid. For a 1 wound unit, you know, you get your hero into combat, like we're talking demon general, so it's probably going on a great unclean one. You drive him into a unit, and what he doesn't kill in his first round of combat, he then will definitely explode in the next shooting phase. So I think that is, you know, it's going to depend a little bit on how much infantry we actually see. Like, if we get this big shift towards big units of infantry on 25 millimeter bases, then Pestilent Breath becomes amazing. If this is just like people are running, you know, min-size units of 32 and 40 millimeter base size dudes, because they also count as collation veterans, then a little bit less useful. But like running this into skinks, running this into clan rats, a variety of things, like it's going to be really strong. It can do a lot of mortal wounds. And note, it's at the start of your shooting phase, and it's within 7 inches, and 7 inches is a bigger range than you think it is. And this is also not targeting one enemy unit. So you can just kind of get it into an area where there is a lot of enemy models. You can kind of spray them and then charge in. Artifacts. There was really nothing in the artifacts that stood out to me as being better now with this battle pack. I mean, not everything's going to be a winner. You're not going to see a winner in every category. I didn't actually include the Cycle of Corruption, but I don't think there's really much in the Cycle of Corruption that's really going to help us either in this new battle pack. Like, it's not like there's anything that's particularly better or worse than it was before. It is what it is. Spells. Our magic got interesting now, because a lot of our magic had to do with enemy units being of a certain size. And so we have Rancid Visitations. Casts on a 6, has a range of 7. You pick an enemy unit within that 7-inch range, and you roll a die for every model within 7 inches. For every 2+, it gets a mortal wound. So you're just going to nuke a lot of 25mm infantry. And casts on a 6, which is not bad. And then you throw that on Blowab, who gets +1 to cast, then it's going off on a 5. The other two are demon spells. Now, up till now, I was really not a big fan of the demon spell lore, because, like, it's not that those spells are bad. It's that they just weren't really synergizing well with kind of what was going on. So we got some changes now, though. Plague Bearers are a lot better than they used to be. You're a lot more likely to run a bunch of Plague Bearers. So what gets better? Fleshy Abundance, right? Casts on a 7, range of 14. Friendly demon unit gets +1 to their wounds characteristic. So all of your Plague Bearers go from 2 wounds to 3 wounds, and man, is that hard to kill. That's going to do a lot to increase their survivability. And oh, by the way, they're probably going to be counting as 3 models on an objective. So say you've got a horde of 20 of them, it counts as 60 models on an objective. They're now 3 wounds each. And I'm sorry, it count as, yeah, they're 3 wounds each. They count as 3 models each. They all have a 5-up ward save and a meaningless 6-up t-shirt save. Plus, they're going to be doing more fighting than they used to be. Plus, you probably have a Sloppy Bile Piper behind them that is going to prevent your opponent from piling in, so you get less attacks in on them. So they are going to be very, very difficult to shift. The downside here is that this is a casting value of 7, but the Master of Magic command trait exists, and you can just throw that on a Great Unclean one. And, previously, there weren't really spells that were that great to throw on a Great Unclean one. Personally, I was taking one with a Sword and Flail and giving him a Flaming Weapon for a spell, just to give him a spell, and he would just become more damaging. But now, if you give him Master of Magic and Fleshy Abundance, like, now he's got a reason to cast spells. And with a reroll of 7 is much, much more achievable. So I think that is definitely something that we're going to be seeing a lot more. I mean, it's something that I think we were seeing already. Like, people were already doing that. But now, like, Plague Bearers are just better. So why wouldn't you? Other one that we have here is the Stream of Corruption. It has a casting value of 6. It has a range of 7. You pick an enemy model within range, and you roll a die for each model within range. You see a pattern here. We do this a lot. On a 5-up, it's a mortal wound. Or you can double the range to 14 inches, but instead it will trigger on 6s instead of 5s. So you got to kind of do that math with this spell of like, what do I have better odds of doing more mortal wounds with? It's going to be situational. Um, but I mean, I think that's a solid spell. Um, Also, like, still good is the favored poxes. Uh, and I think you have more reason now to bring a Poxbringer because he's less points than a Great Unclean One for a caster, and like he would actually be a good candidate to throw favored poxes onto because he's not gonna like be on the front lines. Like the problem with favored poxes is like you have to cast it and then not do anything. And who wants to do that with a 500 point Great Unclean One? Like, no, you're not going to want to waste a quarter of the points in your army on a spell. Would you waste 150 points on it? You might. So I think, again, value propositions have changed. You're less incentivized to bring monsters than you used to be. So you might want to take that Great Unclean One out of your army and put in a Poxbringer and some Plague Bearers instead. All right, sub-factions. Well, the obvious winner here is Munificent Wanderers, because it buffs Plague Bearers. Your Plague Bearers do extra disease. Now, the question is it going to actually be worth it to take that? Because your Plague Bearers are going to get in like twice as many attacks as they used to. So are they going to be maxing out their disease every turn without that? That's the question. So this is kind of like a time will tell sort of thing. It's certainly worth trying out and experimenting with. It's kind of like the obvious go-to because, you know, a lot of you're going to be using a lot of Plague Bearers, and if you have a list with a lot of Plague Bearers in them, like you take the thing that buffs Plague Bearers, right? If anything, you might go, all right, here's my list. I've got to pick a sub faction. Which of these 6 sub factions is going to be best for me? And it's probably going to be Munificent Wanderers if you're running a bunch of Plague Bearers in your list. Even if they're probably going to max out their 7 disease per turn anyway. The other cheeky one that I like here is actually Filthbringers. And if you recall, that is the one that lets you take the Rot Coven, which is 3 Rotbringer sorcerers at a discount, and they can get buffs to casting. And then Rotbringer sorcerers also make endless spells diseased when you cast them, so that they, you know, in the movement phase and in the combat phase, when they're, you know, within 3 inches of an enemy unit, they're throwing a disease on them as if they were a Nurgle unit. Why is this in particular good? Well, there was just a big across the board points drop on endless spells, and a lot of them actually got better and their points went down. So I think this in particular, like, it's just this random thing that, like, you know, I mean, this got second at Adepticon already, just being what it was, and now the endless spells are better and cheaper. So it's definitely one to go and take a look at again, because this could be really interesting now, and it's a cheeky weird list. So I like it. Units. We are on to units. So I already talked ad nauseum about Plague Bearers, so I am not going to rehash that particular war scroll. What we are going to do is look at various other things. And oh, by the way, this hits almost every war scroll in the book. It's kind of crazy. It really does have a profound overall effect on your unit selections and what it does to things. Some really odd winners you have here. Rodigus, Great Unclean One, Glotkin, and then to a lesser extent the Magath Lords. Why are these suddenly better than they used to be? Well, the downside is you don't get the bonuses that you used to for doing battle tactics with them. But your opponent also doesn't get points for killing them. So that's a big buff. Also in this battle pack, Hunters of the Heartlands no longer exists. It is not in this battle pack. That means you can go all willy-nilly with monstrous actions, which means Mountains of Loathsome Flesh, which on the Glotkin does 5 mortal wounds flat on a 2+. There's nothing stopping that from happening. There's no Hunters of the Heartlands protecting your opponent from that. So these guys all got this big bonus. Like now they can always use their monstrous actions. Whereas before, like Hunters of the Heartlands would just like stuff like the Glotkin from using a monstrous action, which is, you know, it's a decent percentage of his damage output. And, you know, although the Magath Lords don't have the special monstrous action, like they can still stomp, they can still roar, they can still do all of those things. So it like monstrous actions have value, and I think their value is probably pointed into monsters. So not having Hunters of the Heartlands around anymore, I think oddly makes a lot of monsters better, especially the monsters that have a unique monstrous rampage. So that's those, right? Also, these also got better because our spells got better. All of these guys, or almost all of these guys, are spellcasters, right? Great Unclean One and Rodigus are demon spellcasters, and previously the demon spell lore kind of sucked, and now we have 2 spells that are really good. So certainly worth looking at. And Rancid Visitations was like always good. Yeah, the other spell that I didn't really talk about, but you know, is worth mentioning, is Blades of Putrefaction. You know, just thinking about it, potentially throwing that onto a unit of Plague Bearers now, you know, you start getting into the, like, am I stacking too many buffs to doing disease onto Plague Bearers? But it's certainly worth thinking about. I think we're going to be having a lot more instances of units like throwing a high quantity of attacks out. So I think that potentially is going to be an interesting interesting spell lore spell. But that's in the mortal spell lore, which, you know, you're fighting against the other mortal spells, which are also good. Moving on down the list, the Poxbringer Herald of Nergal. Already mentioned this before. He's a cheap demon spellcaster. Our demon spell lore got better, so he got better. That's really all there is to it. He doesn't do much other than cast a spell, but, you know, is that really such a bad thing? It's a good thing to do. Spoilpox Scrivener. He only buffs Plague Bearers, and guess what? Plague Bearers just got better. So having a cheap hero to follow them around to buff them also got better. Same thing with Sloppity Bilepiper, although he was already pretty decent because he buffs all Nurgle demons as opposed to just Plague Bearers. So he coupled really well with Beasts of Nergal. Still will continue to couple well with Beasts of Nergal. We'll talk about that in a second. Actually, let's talk about that right now, because, you know, they're next on my list anyway. Beasts of Nergal, you would think that this would not be a thing that is all that exciting in this battle pack, because they're not Galatian veterans, and they wouldn't be good for the Bounty Hunters Battalion because they're not throwing a lot of attacks. So what the hell do you do with Beasts of Nergal? Well, this is one that is going to be better in response to a meta shift. One of the things that Beasts of Nurgle are really good at is charging into an enemy unit that is, like a troop unit, like a sizable troop unit, and you tag the corner, and then you use Sloppity Bile Piper's tune to prevent pile-in. So you do damage to them. They can't throw much damage back at you, and now they're stuck in combat. So the fact that you're going to have more enemy troop units to be doing that to is going to make Beasts of Nurgle better, right? It's weird that they're better because they're good against a thing that you're just going to see more of. Now, it's all going to depend also on exactly what the profiles of enemy units look like that are being brought to the battlefield. But listen, these guys are already good. The Beast of Nergal list is already a good list. And we're getting what is likely to be a meta shift in their favor. So, right? Like, if he charges a monster, the monster is just going to go with all of its attacks on him. But if you go into a unit and you tag the corner, they're only going to be able to fight with a couple of models. So you're in a much better situation. Plague drones. So once again, another unit that cannot be Galatian veterans, but its stock goes up because there's going to be more Hordy units. Its shooting attack is, has attacks equal to the number of enemy models within range. So, I mean, units with more enemy models equals more attacks equals plague drones are better. Just how it's going to roll. So I think those are a lot better. They're a lot better poised than they used to be. An important thing I think to note in all of this is that we don't know for sure how much things are actually going to change. We certainly have a large list of incentives to change lists, but time will tell as to, are those incentives actually big enough to make, more horde-oriented armies actually better. The things that we look at in our list that are like plague bearers, obviously they're a lot more valuable than they used to be just on the merits of them getting rules that buff them more. But the things that are more responsive to the meta are going to depend on the actual meta shift. But I think Beasts of Nurgle are already good. And Plague Drones, I think, are currently, I just like Pusquails better. They're very similar. I think, might this meta shift make them a little bit better than Pusquails? I don't know. Just going down the list, Rotbringer Sorcerers, we already talked about Rot Covens and Filthbringers. I mean, that's really what this is all about. Fecula Flyblown, if you're just going for a single sorcerer and not playing with the Rot Coven, then Fecula, of course, is an interesting option. And, she's got her 2 Blight Kings that come with her, so why not? So I'm going to do this a little bit kind of 2 at the same time, give you a 2 for 1. Putrid Blight Kings and the Lord of Plagues. So here we have an interesting combination because Blight Kings, now units of 10 Blight Kings are kind of back in style because they're going to be able to fight in 2 ranks. And when you're getting more attacks in like that, right? You're doubling the number of attacks that are coming out of a unit of Blight Kings, and a Lord of Plagues is giving each Blight King +1 attack. Now, ordinarily, that on a unit of 5 Blight Kings, it's only 5 extra attacks. On a unit of 10 Blight Kings, it's 10 extra attacks. And that's kind of a big deal. But we have to bear in mind that a unit of 10 Blight Kings is throwing 50 attacks already. 50 attacks on 3s and 3s. And this would be a fantastic unit to put into the Bounty Hunter Battalion and make them all damage 2 against Galatian veterans. 50 attacks going into an enemy unit on 3s and 3s, rend 1, 2 damage. That's going to kill a lot of shit. Also, Relentless Attackers is going to be more valuable than it was before, because, you know, the average wound count of things that they're going to be running into is going to be lower, theoretically. So, you know, the lower the wounds, the more likely you are to roll up damage on Relentless Attackers, which did absolutely nothing against monsters. So if we see less monsters, this gets better. Same thing with Pusquell Blightlords. They also have the Relentless Attackers ability, but they're a lower model count. But they're still also going to be really great for bounty hunters. You know, they've been popular already. I mean, you know, the Pusquell list was, you know, table 1 at Atlantic City Open round 5 was Pusquell spam versus Pusquell spam. And now, like Pusquells are already good alpha strikers, but now if you make them bounty hunters, in addition to that, now they can run across the table and they can just smash through any screen that your opponent puts in front of them. And then they still have Relentless Attackers to do additional damage. Plus they do their impact hits. You know, for each model doing 11 attacks on 3s and 3s, 2 damage is really good. It's really good. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything I can really think of here that is getting some benefits out of this new battle pack. You know, I think I can definitely see demon heavy lists working. You know, I can see the potential for kind of like a hybrid list where you run like the Beasts of Nurgle and Horticulus and Sloppity Bile Piper package, plus some units of Plague Bearers and a Spoilpox Scrivener, and then like a Great Unclean one. I'm not sure how the points would work out and all of that, but I mean, that sounds like a pretty good list now. So it's interesting. This is very interesting. I think this is very positive for Nergal. There was a bunch of stuff, as we can see, that when I first read this book, I said, wow, there's a lot of abilities in here that are really effective against hordes. Too bad hordes aren't a thing right now. But if hordes become a thing, this book will be outstanding. And now we are potentially rolling into a horde-based meta, so I think we have a lot of really strong tools in Nurgle to deal with horde units. So, with that said, guys, that's all for now. Enjoy playing Nurgle. Enjoy the new season of the General's Handbook. Enjoy the new battle tomes that are coming out. I know there are a couple of books that have a lot of people that are very passionate about them. So enjoy your Skaven, enjoy your Sylvaneth. I know I'll also be enjoying my Skaven. I'll probably have to expand my Skaven army a little bit, depending on what the War Scrolls look like and all of that. But yeah, that's it for now, guys. I'll talk to you all later.